Hey guys, Dino at Speed Circuit here, and today we're going to cover my thoughts and experience on owning this 2010 Toyota Tundra for the past 11 and a half years. So let's go. But before we get into that, I'd really appreciate it if you guys took the time to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way we can monetize the channel and put more time, money, and effort into making better videos for you to watch. So first, I think we should talk about why I decided to get this truck. Back in 2010, 2011, I was working on my house a lot and I was making countless stops at Lowe's and Home Depot, loading up a bunch of wood and going back and forth. So at the time I had a 1996 Toyota Tacoma 4x4 with a 5-speed manual, and I loved that little truck. It was scrappy as hell, but one day I was coming back from Lowe's and I had a bunch of lumber in the bed of my Tacoma, and I had to have the tailgate down because the boards were so long. It didn't have an 8-foot bed, and some of the boards I had were 8+ feet long, maybe 10 feet long. So I had everything strapped down and just kind of partially resting on the open tailgate. Well, I got about halfway home and I looked in my rearview mirror only to find my wood quickly falling out of the back of the truck. So I stopped right away and I had to get out of the truck to start cleaning up all this lumber in the middle of the road. And it was like a 3-lane road, which is pretty busy. It's right in front of the mall. And I knew right there that it was time for a bigger, better, newer truck. So luckily, a good Samaritan that saw everything go down helped me load the wood back up into the truck, but we were kind of hasty about it because we're kind of in the middle of traffic. And I had to basically drive about 10 to 15 miles an hour for the rest of the way home, which took another 45 minutes just to be able to get everything home safely without the lumber falling out again. After I got everything out, I put the tailgate up and I noticed there was a nice crease all the way across the tailgate from where the tailgate slammed up against the bumper, because what happened was the cables snapped that held the tailgate up, and once they let go, it allowed the tailgate to fall all the way down and contact the bumper. So that happened on New Year's Eve of 2010 going into 2011. So as soon as I got home, I started looking into new trucks. So at that time, everything that I owned was manual, and I was dead set on buying another manual. So I looked around to see what manual trucks I could get, and to my surprise, they were really hard to find. The only ones I could really find were diesel trucks and high-end expensive trucks, or smaller trucks such as other Tacomas. But I needed something with a bigger bed that could tow a little more and haul a little more and have a bigger payload. So I knew a Tacoma wasn't really the right option. And after going back and forth with a lot of different trucks, I kind of landed on the Tundra. So against the advice of a lot of my friends and associates, I ended up making my first stop Shore Toyota, which is my local Toyota dealership. I've heard a lot of horror stories from that place, but I figured they're 10 minutes away from my house. I'll just go check them out. The only thing I cared about in the truck was that it had an 8-foot bed, power locks and windows, and 4x4. Beyond that, any options or amenities I wasn't going to be picky about. I don't love trucks the way I love cars. A truck is just a utility vehicle to me and a means to an end. So if I don't have the nicest truck in the world, it's not that important to me. So I walked into Shore Toyota and I saw this nice salsa red Toyota Tundra on the showroom floor, and its sticker price was about $36K. I tried to negotiate with them a little bit, but they didn't want to play ball, so I went home. In the meantime, I had told a good friend of mine, Kyle, that I was on the search for a new truck. I told him about the 3 requirements I had, and the power locks and windows was a non-negotiable because my Tacoma had crank windows, and boy did I hate it. So he was looking around online as well and helping me shop around for trucks. And finally, by January 3rd of 2011, we had found a couple good options. So 2 hours later, I'm back at Shore Toyota. So long story short, things at Hackensack went more or less smoothly. I think I ended up paying a little more than we agreed on over the phone. I wanted $5K for my Tacoma, and they told me over the phone they'd give me $5K. And then when I got there, they told me closer to $4K, and I think we kind of split the difference a little bit. Then there was a $400 or $500 document fee that I had to pay that they hadn't mentioned. So all in all, I still got a great deal. This is the one I came home with from Hackensack. The cost of the truck sticker was around 34K. I got it for about 26.9, and I drove it home that night. I didn't get out of the dealership till after midnight, and the first thing I did was call my buddy Kyle on the way home and tell him that I got the truck and thanking him for finding it for me. And I made it home late, straight to sleep, because I had been on the road since about 11 a.m. between going from here to almost Delaware to all these different dealerships and back and forth. So me personally, I'll never deal with Shore Toyota again, at least not for purchasing a vehicle. I learned my lesson. I should have listened to everyone that told me all those years, and that's not the point of this video, but you just have to experience the place to really understand it. So my plan for this truck was to keep it for 10 years and then upgrade to something else, because I figured by then it would be old and beat up enough and have enough mileage on it, and there'd be something significantly better that would justify replacing it. So I made sure I got the options that were important to me, and nothing too crazy. So let's talk about the options. So this only has basic options. It's got the 5.7 liter V8, which is the best motor. It has the SR5 package, which includes power locks, windows, etc. It's got the cold weather package, which is really nice because it has a remote start, heated side mirrors, and a couple other things like that. It's got the stainless steel side skirts, which are holding up great, considering that this truck is left outside 24/7, 365. And most importantly, it's a 4x4. So in the snow or dirt or whatever, I can get traction. I have something to drive around. So this isn't really a mod, but I got the bed liner, the OEM Toyota bed liner. The reason I got it after the fact was because the truck was so basic it didn't come with a bed liner. I ended up actually getting the bed liner from Shore Toyota. Their parts department is really good, and the guys are really good there. They actually helped me kind of halfway put it in, which is really nice. There were better options at the time, like Rhino liner type of things and aftermarket bed liners, but this was quick, easy, and relatively cheap, and has served me pretty well through the years. The truck came with basic steel wheels with plastic hubcaps, and I was okay with that because I was getting a cheap truck, and I waited for those tires to wear out, and then I upgraded to some wheels and tires that I bought as a kit from Tire Rack. So I do quite a bit of towing with this. I tow up to 2 race cars in a 24-foot enclosed steel trailer, and that puts a lot of weight on the truck. Its max capacity is about 10,000 pounds of towing, and I'm probably teetering on that on a regular basis. So after years of towing, the rear suspension kind of started getting beat up, and I decided to upgrade it this past winter. So you can see we have upgraded struts back here. And I got a recommendation from a friend to put these airbags on top of the leaf spring. The purpose of the airbag is to take some of the load off of the suspension and deal with the tongue weight from towing the trailer. So the way to use the airbags is to hook up an air compressor or a pump and access these Schrader valves, and this one will inflate the bag on the right and this one will inflate the bag on the left, and you pump it up to about 75 psi, and the truck will ride better and handle better with a trailer on the back. When you're not towing, you want to deflate that airbag so that way it rides properly, or else it'll be too stiff. I also have a reverse camera right here that hooks up to an aftermarket head unit, which makes it more convenient when I'm trying to hitch the trailer up. So here's a switch for my jellyfish launcher, and that really comes in handy for road rage situations where people cut you off. Here I have a Pioneer head unit, which has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay built in, and that thing is crucial because when you're driving around, you could sync your phone up to it and it will give you Android, Google Maps. It'll give you access to your music and all that kind of stuff. So compared to the factory stock head unit in there, it's a godsend. So here we have the interface from the Pioneer head unit. I want to say it's a 4100 NEX, but I'd have to look that up to be sure. You can see I have all these different apps we can launch. Amazon Music, phone, you can make phone calls, Audible, all that kind of stuff. Google Maps, which is convenient. You got your GPS, and you can still have your controls and access to your other apps down there. You do have to have it plugged in through the USB port, but other than that, it's not a big deal. Small price to pay, especially this is an older unit. This is about 7 years old, give or take, and it works well. I ended up upgrading to the WeatherTech floor mat since about a week after I purchased the truck. a good friend of mine got into the passenger side with muddy boots and immediately ruined my carpet floor mats on that side. So I decided to spring for these since I'm sure it was going to get dirty again. The last thing I want to talk about is the Tundra brake controller, and this is for the trailer that I tow with the cars in it. It has electronic brakes built into it, and essentially this will give me extra braking or less braking depending on how I want to dial it in. Effectively just tie in with my stock braking system, so when I hit the brakes on the truck, the trailer will also brake. There's one more mod that's not actually a mod, but everyone thinks it's a mod. My sick exhaust system. That's a factory exhaust. However, it didn't always sound like that. I think over the years I've developed exhaust leaks, and the more I drive the truck, the louder it gets. So it sounds good. I get compliments on it all the time. I was at Pocono Raceway last weekend and I started the truck, and the guy with the Corvette next to me was like, "That exhaust is sick." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, it's broken." So thanks, Toyota. I guess I'll rock it until it falls off. So now let's talk driving impressions. It actually drives pretty good. Kind of just drives like a big car, which is pretty impressive, especially for the time that this came out. If I drove other trucks that were also 2010s, they really didn't drive very good, at least trucks in this class. They were very loose. The suspension in this is kind of stiff, which is odd for a truck, but I like it because that's what I'm used to in a car. It has a weird throttle response issue that I've heard a lot of other people complain about that have this generation Tundra, as well as the Sequoias. It has a dead spot in the throttle for the first, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so. It kind of doesn't really open the throttle very much, and then it jumps up out of nowhere. So if you're going from a stop or a low speed and you ask for a little bit more throttle, you'll really get almost nothing until you hit a certain point, and then it'll just kind of jump. So that's kind of annoying. I'm sure that there's aftermarket products that will fix that. I don't care enough to deal with that, but that's just the downside of a drive-by-wire system that is not properly set up from the factory. Handling wise, it's actually, you know, pretty good. As I mentioned, it has a pretty stiff suspension. But here I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit. Body roll test. Honestly, I think this thing has less body roll than my ND Miata did from the factory, which is hilarious, but unfortunately true. The surprising thing about this truck, especially with this V8, it runs on 87 octane fuel, which is convenient. It's the only vehicle I own that runs on regular, and has almost 400 horsepower in torque. I want to say the window sticker said 385 horsepower and 405 torque, something like that. But the nice thing is, if I step on the gas and it downshifts, it moves pretty good. I believe these things run a high 14-second quarter mile, which was about the same as the Honda Civic Si of the same era. So that's pretty impressive. Aside from that, you get a little bit of chatter from the rear wheels and a little bit of wheel hop if you try to step on it too low of a speed. And you might have an issue with throttle cut and the traction control stepping in, which could be annoying at times. You generally disable the traction control, but it's still not fully disabled. It'll still kick in a little bit, but it's good enough. So I just wanted to touch on the storage space we have in this truck, which for a regular cab is pretty impressive. We have a ridiculous number of cup holders. We have 2 here, and this has a removable centerpiece. So if you want to put something large in here, like a tablet or whatever, it'll fit. We have 2 on the door, on the passenger door. We have 2 more in the same spot on the driver's door. And we have 2 more in here in the center console. So 8 cup holders in a vehicle that's really only designed for 2 people is borderline ridiculous, but you do you, Toyota. Another thing that's nice is that even though this is really technically a 2-seater, you have a jump seat where you could fit a 3rd person in here. You pull this lever out, you lift it up, and it has a seat belt and everything. Now, obviously it's not as wide, and they're gonna have to put their feet on the tunnel, but it still works. As an added bonus, you have an extra storage compartment down here, which you can keep a bunch of equipment in. You can see I have a bunch of junk in there. And there's endless compartments in this thing. There's a storage compartment here, a compartment here, put more junk in there. You have not one, but 2 glove boxes. And you have these little compartments on the side of the armrest. You also have a flip down compartment here that you can put cards in, and another one here for your sunglasses. Wait, when did I buy Ray-Bans? These must be fake. Unfortunately, I can't see how stupid I look. There's no mirrors here. I'm sure there are in the better trims, but not in the poor man's spec. That's slightly annoying. My experience with the truck overall has been positive, but it does have a few shortcomings, and there's a few minor issues I've had. I think relatively early on, one of my stalks, it might have been my cruise control stalk or something, just kind of broke one day, which is odd because there was no reason for that to happen. It just kind of stopped working. The brakes are also kind of lacking. Even when I'm just driving it around without towing, they're kind of weak. Now, I guess I'm used to driving around Porsches and Miatas and Evos and cars that have really good brake systems. So stopping a 5,500 pound truck is a different situation than stopping a 3,000 pound sports car. But I feel like they could have done better. Where I have a real problem is when I'm towing. Even though the trailer has its own braking system, it is lacking in a lot of situations, and there's been multiple times where I've locked up the wheels trying to stop in time, and it's just a little sketchy when you're pulling 10,000 pounds with it. Beyond that, I think my biggest gripe would probably be the fuel economy. I want to say if I'm driving the truck around, I'm averaging 14 to 15 miles to the gallon, which I know trucks generally don't do very well, but newer trucks, gasoline trucks, still are usually around 20. So this is kind of poor. At least it only takes 87 octane regular fuel, and I don't have to put premium in it. But at the end of the day, it still drinks a lot of fuel. If I'm towing, I'm getting about 7 miles to the gallon. And I have to stop so frequently to fill up on a long trip that it really starts to hurt my travel time. With a full 9,000 or 10,000 pounds towing behind me, it will struggle going uphill at highway speeds. If I'm trying to do 70 to 80 miles an hour, it won't be in 6th gear. It'll shift down to 5th or maybe 4th sometimes. Different changes to the throttle input won't really make a difference, a noticeable difference in acceleration. So sometimes it has to downshift to maintain speed going uphill, even if it's a slight hill. So again, that's just because I'm at the limit of the truck. Realistically, a half-ton truck is not the ideal situation. If I'm towing 10,000 pounds, it's the limit. So I get it. I'm using it for its max capacity, and I can't expect it to be efficient at that capacity. Realistically, I should get a 3/4 ton truck if I want to continue to do this. However, my experience with the Tundra has been good enough where I would want to purchase another Toyota, but unfortunately they don't make a bigger truck than this. I think the newer ones might tow a little more, but it's not on par with what a 3/4 ton truck does. And the 3/4 ton trucks are also prohibitively expensive for something that I don't drive a lot or really care much about. So for a truck I've had for 11.5 years, I've managed 73,000 miles, which really isn't very much. I don't drive it very often. I drive it mostly in the winter, and beyond that, I only drive it when I need to use it as a truck. So if I'm towing my race cars, or if I'm going to Home Depot, or I need to, use it as a truck, that's when I'll use it. Or if the weather's kind of crappy and I don't feel like getting one of my cars dirty, I'll drive the truck. But in general, it's not my favorite thing in the world to drive, just because I have cooler stuff, and that has made the truck last longer than I anticipated. Another thing I always really appreciated about the interior is how much space it has behind the seats for storage. If you look in there, there's actually a nice amount of space back there to store groceries or whatever you need. This is the small regular cab, and I've been able to fit a lot of stuff back there, and it's really been a blessing to not have to put certain things in the bed of the truck. And it's really convenient having that space behind you to store whatever I need. A couple more issues I've had with the truck. The headlights have yellowed over the years, which that happens when you leave something outside for a long time. And also my front bumper, the clear coat peeled off of it after a while. So I had that repainted a few years back just to kind of restore its natural beauty. And so I don't look like a broke ass driving an old truck around. So my initial plan for this truck was to keep it for 10 years and just resell it and buy something newer and better, because I figured in 10 years there would be something significantly better for a similar price range, and I would be able to get better fuel economy or tow capacity or what have you. Unfortunately, I'm now on year 11 and I have considered buying a better truck, but I'm hesitant, and here's why. Number one, I feel like we're on the verge of a new generation of trucks coming out. You have the Cybertruck coming out, you have the Rivian, all these nice electric trucks. I think those are great, but on the other hand, I'm apprehensive about the use case for me, since I will be doing a lot of long road trips. Sometimes we go down to Atlanta Motorsports Park or Road Atlanta, and in an electric truck, don't know that I would have the range towing a race car that I'm going to need in order to make it down there quickly. If I had to stop every hour or two and charge up for even 25 minutes, that's really going to make that trip a lot longer than it needs to be. Best version of the new Tundra that came out this year is a V6 twin turbo hybrid, and that sounds like it would be up my alley, but unfortunately I think they cost around 70 grand, and again, I just don't care enough about a truck to spend 70 grand on it. So we have a lot of options coming out. We have the new Ford Lightning, which is an electric truck. We have the Rivian, we have the Cybertruck, which will eventually come out. I'm sure there's a few others I'm forgetting that are in the pipeline, but at the end of the day, I feel like if I bought a truck right now, I might regret it 2 or 3 years from now. So I think I'm just gonna hold off. I don't have too many miles on this thing right now, and I'll just make it last a little bit longer and wait until I have options that I'll be happier with. If I go with a diesel truck or another gas-powered truck that is significantly better than this in terms of towing capacity, I'm gonna have to spend a lot of money, and I don't, again, it goes back to, I don't want to spend too much money on a truck because ultimately it's not that important to me. I'd rather spend the money on a car. And if this is doing the job, it's good enough for now, although it's just kind of hanging by a string. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe. See you next time.